I'm going to pull the curtain out a little bit on what I've been doing. I have spent significant time visiting almost all Build the Earth Minecraft servers to see the most significant areas every team has ever built. The things I've seen, I know there's no going back, but it's my responsibility to condense this journey and show you the Earth in Minecraft and everything significant that we've ever accomplished. For Russia, I thought it would be another ordinary episode, just another day in the Earth in Minecraft. I was wrong. This team, what they've done, and what they've been doing. To put it in simple terms to understand, I didn't think any team was close to challenging the Dominion of New York for crown of most progress in any team. I was wrong. Team CIS, which covers Russia and some surrounding territories, when all of its various islands of progress in all their areas is combined, is more progress than the city of New York. But that's not fair, because we're comparing a single city with the combined progress of the largest country on Earth. Well, what if I told you that when just Moscow's various completion areas are put together, that it might rival New York in size? Upon surveying everything that has been done on their server, this is the conclusion I have came to. This accomplishment is magnified when you consider one very important factor. Russia doesn't have 3D. Once you calculate that insane disadvantage into their building challenge, and what it would take to create tens of thousands of buildings under those circumstances, you start to discover why CIS is becoming my favorite team. I don't know how they've done this, or how they can keep working so hard, but I'm gonna show you it. So come with me on a wild ride as we investigate a civilization dating back thousands of years, and what the last few centuries of Soviet progress in the Great White Beyond looks like. This is everything Russia has ever done. Incredible progress has been made in and surrounding the Red Square of the Kremlin in Moscow, Russia. Here is where Lenin's body is on display. That might not sound like a very spicy tidbit, but let me explain. Lenin died in 1924, almost 100 years ago. They kept his body on public display for years. Years turned into decades. They kept using abominable chemical techniques and corpse repair to keep the body in a viewable condition, and now, 100 years later, you can still get in line to see him. If that's not an informative introduction on what to expect in Russia, I don't know what is. Absolute absurdity. Significant progress has been made at the Moscow State University. I don't care what anyone says, this is the coolest and most imposing state college on Earth. Every American university seems whiny in comparison. The school was founded in 1755, while Moscow itself was identifiable in history as early as 1147 AD. Russia, being locked behind the Red Curtain for most of the 20th century, left the entire world utterly curious about this exotic land of the East. Then, a year after the empire falls, the first Russian McDonald's opens in 1990, and 30 years later, we get to see the strange and exotic twisty shapes of the palace built in Minecraft. In a word, this place is majestic, but it's just the beginning. An impressive wealth of progress in Moscow rests in the Nagatinsky district, a massive residential area overlooking the Moskva River. One of the ways in which we can build the Earth in Minecraft faster that has been mentioned in a previous video is finding copy and paste matches. You look at Soviet architecture like this and you might say, it all looks so similar, it must all be copy and paste. Some of it is, but a lot of it isn't. Some of the buildings are so similar but just enough different and rotated in a different angle that the copy-paste potential is lost, meaning the final product of just how gigantic this area is even more impressive. In Moscow, Team CIS has also built the Vidinki, or Exhibition of Achievements of National Economy for short. It is a permanent trade show and amusement park with incredible architecture. This was built under Stalin, which freaks me out. Being this close to this kind of legendary history gives me the chills, but this place in Minecraft is yet to be finished. That makes sense, given that its total allotted size is larger than the country of Monaco. They've also built the Austin Kino TV Tower, the 12th tallest structure in the world at 540 meters. After its completion between 1967 and 1974, it was the tallest in the world, visible not just to all of Moscow, but to several neighboring provinces outside of the city limits. One of those is Kontsevo, another residential area that Team CIS has worked on to manage fully completed islands of progress. The roads, parking lots, trees, and building details, all fully finished to recreate the experience of seeing these impending Russian-style living conveniences firsthand. They're even doing power lines using button trails. Speaking of button lines, they're also using them here at Kralasko Landscape Park, not just for power, but for ski lifts as well. While Team CIS has finished the park, they haven't done the surrounding buildings yet, which includes things like Intel and Microsoft. One more place, a bit more far away, but they can still see the Ostankino TV tower, is the Principality of Zelenograd. This is a new civilizational zone being founded in the 1950s and regarded as the center of the digital Soviet forefront, nicknamed Russian Silicon Valley. Before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Zelenograd was a closed city, which meant no photographs were allowed to be taken and foreigners could not visit it. Given the nature of its economic purpose and the Cold War, that makes sense in a North Korean-esque way. The most significant aspect of this area is Team CIS's completed radius of this city. It might be the largest connected area they have in Moscow. Through lots of work and breakthroughs in loading technology, we here at Pippen Studios are able to get shots in Minecraft of maps of immense size with mods that allow for hundreds, even thousands of chunk loading render distance settings as opposed to the usual 64 limit. But the servers like to disagree with this setting even though it's entirely client-based, so this server kicks me if I set it to anything higher than 128. And 128 is still not enough to load all of what they've completed here in Zelenograd. It's that big. At the moment I'm recording this, it's still an obstacle and we're showing you everything we can. Zelenograd rules. And that is everything that Team Russia has built in Moscow. I told you, this build team is f***ing nuts. Let's keep going. Progress has begun in Sergiev Posad. Sergiev is known for its 14th century monastery complex, the Trinity Lavra St. Sergius. It's been a popular religious pilgrimage site for centuries. The entire city itself is widely based on religious influence. Following the Russian Communist Revolution, the religious center was closed down, as was all other religious sites nationwide when they outlawed religious belief. It reopened after being recaptured from the Germans in World War II. Speaking of religion, just off the coast within the Uglik Reservoir is the Kalyazin Bell Tower. This structure had a lot more to it when it was first built, including bells weighing over 37,000 pounds. But when Stalin ordered the creation of the Uglik Dam, the lower part of the structure was drowned and so much of the original architecture was dismantled. The campanile, being quite tall, was left in the water where it stands to this day. Team CIS have also completed the Dormition Cathedral in Moscow, built in 1326, making it one of the oldest religious cathedrals standing on Russian grounds. But historical evidence points to the theory that a wooden church preceded it for centuries prior. Ivan the Terrible's coronation took place in this church, but the church was converted into a museum following the Communist Revolution. By special permission from Lenin, they were allowed to hold the last Easter service before it became so. Most of its church treasures during this time were transferred to the Kremlin armory or sold overseas. So many relics lost to time and the wild nature of the early 20th century. The Peter and Paul Fortress. This place is crazy. The Russian Tsarist government that preceded the Communist Revolution held political prisoners here. No more than 100 at a time, and they had access to tobacco, newspapers, and other things, but the rising sentiment against the Tsarist government from the Bolsheviks was that this was a hellish and brutal place. Ironically, it ended up becoming one, as during the revolution they crammed the former government within the fort's walls and shot to death 4 Grand Dukes from the House of Romanov inside. In terms of completed progress, Team CIS has made a lot of bridges and connected areas to this, including a huge portion of the opposite bank of the river, centered around the Hermitage Dvortsevaya Ploshad, or the Palace Square, regarded as the center of the Imperial Russian Empire, the Tsarist era we mentioned. In the center lies the Alexander Column, weighing 680 tons. To the side of the square has St. Isaac's Cathedral, an incredible domed structure which has also been built in Minecraft. The Moscow railway station has been built. Now, the interesting thing about Russia's railway system is, when you're in a Cold War, one of your priorities is surviving a nuclear apocalypse. That means going underground. The amount of secret Soviet tunnels, chambers, complexes, and government suites that have been built during the 20th century, we'll never discover them all, but most of them are probably tied directly to the underground infrastructure of the railway system, tunnels which Team CIS have already completed miles of and showed me back when we collaborated with them in Build It 1-to-1. A more substantial amount of progress exists at the Finland railway station. Here it was that Lenin returned from exile in 1917, and here it was that the last train in 1918, including Finnish people, successfully escaped the revolution on board, departed to Finland. Team CIS has built the Polkyo Airport with a really unique and interesting design. In terms of flying to Russia, if you're American, the US government has issued a level 4 do not travel advisory since the Ukraine war began, the highest alert on the scale. But incoming incoming tourism is expected to multiply by several factors for this airport and others in the coming years. Viborg Castle has been completed. A Swedish castle, the town of Viborg swapping ownership between Russia and Finland several times over the last century. They've also built Ivangorod, a 600-year-old fortress converted into a modern town inhabited by almost 10,000 people, and they've built Kizzy Island, a historic reserve that has restored buildings from multiple epochs, including the 15th and 16th centuries. The Alyosha Monument in Murmansk is a soldier statue dedicated to the lives lost in World War II. The soldier faces west, toward the Valley of Glory, where the fiercest fighting of the Arctic campaign occurred when the German invaders were turned back from the approaches to Murmansk at the Zapadnya Litsa River in July 1941. Team CIS has completed a huge swath of progress in the town of Veliki Luki, a very old town nearing a millennium. Unfortunately, during World War II, a German force of 20,000 surrounded the town, though the citizens of Veliki Luki were prepared, having turned the town into a fortress. After months of fighting, the town was liberated from the assault by a portion of the Red Army, pushing all Germans back by 1943. By then, at that point, very little remained of Veliki Luki, as the town was almost completely destroyed. Its modern incarnation hosts a number of historical destinations and even a Ferris wheel, among other attractions. A significant amount of progress has been completed in Kaliningrad, a city on the coast of the Baltic Sea. Interestingly enough, the larger principality this city rests in is separate from the borders and landmass of Russia. You'll have to pass through other countries if you want to actually walk to this part of Russia. It's Russia's Alaska, so to speak. This area was the heart of Prussia historically, the gigantic kingdom you may or may not have heard of that fell apart rather quickly leading up to the World Wars. Its last remnants forever dissolved in 1947. Among Team CIS's most fantastic completed progress in the city includes the Poverty Square, very heavily renovated in 2005, including a removal of a Lenin statue from the front of the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. The next gigantic completed area of progress that Team CIS has done is the Kazan Kremlin, a gorgeous area with a litany of historic buildings that are centuries old. This area is predominantly populated by Tatars, most of which are Russian Muslims descended from the Golden Horde. The central citadel is the only remaining Tatar fortress in Russia. Ivan the Terrible conquered Kazan in 1552 and ordered the construction of the surrounding Kremlin on the ruins of the former castle of Kazan Khans. This area is a clash of many different cultures and historical influences, including the Leaning Tower originating from the time of Peter the Great, and the entire area was in celebration on the opening of Kol Sharif, one of the largest mosques in Europe, the celebration being held in 2005. They've also completed the Kazan Millennium Bridge, created in 2005 and costing 94 million euros to construct, with impressive swaths of completed progress by Team CIS on either side. Joined with the Kazan Kremlin area is another gigantic area of completed progress completed around the Kemal Theater. This entire sector and the larger city has grown since the introduction of capitalism post-Soviet Union, moving from 10th to 8th most populated city in Russia and becoming an important member of the National Economic Network. Northwards of the Kazan Kremlin is the Kazan Family Center and also this beautiful structure, which I couldn't get any info on and doesn't actually exist on the plot of land equivalent in Google Maps. I don't know what's going on with this, whether it existed in the past, exists now and Google Maps is wrong, or will exist in the future. It's beautiful and I would love to know more about it. Team CIS has more completed progress in this surrounding area. Speaking of surrounded areas, north of Kazan is the large city Naberezhny-Chelny, of which our team has completed a decent amount. Surprisingly enough, this is one of the first destinations we've covered that doesn't have ancient history, as the town was designated and recognized in 1930. Home to the Kamaz factory, this vehicle plant is the largest in the world. Next up is the Mamayev Kurgan, a World War II memorial commemorating the Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted almost a year and was one of the bloodiest battles in ascertainable human history. Incredibly, the monument has this amazing architectural ascent beautifully represented in Minecraft. In real life, the monument overlooks the city from its center, something that would look unbelievable in Minecraft once the city is finished. Here's another gigantic cluster of progress that they've made. I know, it never ends. This team is f***ing insane. This one's called Ulyanovsk. the birthplace of Vladimir Lenin. This city, including its ancient wooden Kremlin, has been razed by fire after fire after fire over the centuries. More recently, they built a hydroelectric plant here, which ended up flooding many of the city's municipalities. To this day, significant areas of residential living are only protected from the waters by dams constructed to contain the water. They've also built Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, couched in this beautiful garden landscape on the embankment of Nizhny Novgorod. Another jaw-droppingly gigantic amount of completed progress stands here, in the city of Ufa, the largest city in the Republic of Bashkortostan. Its economy specializes in oil refinement, chemistry, and mechanical engineering. A medieval city rested on this site as far back as the 5th century AD, making this town's ascertainable history the oldest of anything we've seen so far. A fortress was built here in 1574 by, you guessed it, Ivan the Terrible, marking the town's official founding date. According to Forbes, Ufa is one of the best cities for business, with populations numbering over 1 million, promising oodles of rubles for your internet startup. Up next, another huge completed area in the Volga region, the city of Sturlitamak. This city was burned to the ground in 1775, being a key controlled territory by Pugachev's rebellion, the man who claimed an end to serfdom and a challenge to the Tsarist Russian Empire. The town came back in the coming centuries leading up to World War II, where it would be involved in the Russian-German struggle like most of these eastern cities. A meteorite also fell near Sturlitamak in 1990 and is in its museum to this day. In terms of completed progress, Team CIS has two large areas, one being the main street, which you have seen, as well as the second area being the city center. Sturlitamak today is a very sports-driven city, with 3 different sports stadiums and a focus on theater as well. A moderate amount of progress has began in Perm, Russia, previously known as Yagoshika in 1723 to 81, and Molotov from 1940 to 57. The same such thing is usually true for previous cities as well. I'm not sure why they keep getting renamed. I'm wondering if Molotov is where the Molotov cocktail originated. Considering the country's political history, the lines seem to connect pretty solidly. Okay, now I googled it. It comes from a guy, Vyacheslav Molotov. Someone came up with the term to insult him. There you go. Perm produced a lot of artillery for World War II, and during the Cold War, Perm became another one of those closed cities that are completely locked out of foreigner view. Now for some quick ones. Team CIS has completed this central square of Rostov-na-Don with some surrounding progress. If you look at the quality of the square, it's absolutely immaculate. They've also built the primary buildings in the center of Grozny, including the heart of Chechnya Mosque, the main civic building, and nearby skyscrapers. A significant amount of starting progress in Makhachkala, another 1 million plus settlement located by the Caspian Sea, another big oil city with textile factories. Here we can see the self-contained, fully completed within the walls Kremlin of Astrakhan, the unapproachable stronghold on the southeastern border of Russia, couched within the city of Astrakhan, the oldest economic and cultural center of the lower Volga region. Yekaterinburg was the mining capital of the Russian Empire. It was named after Peter the Great's wife. They also hosted the 2018 FIFA World Cup and takes the cake out of the entire list in terms of history. Its most ancient settlement records date back to 7,000 to 8,000 BC, though none of the people who lived at that time are still alive to confirm this. In addition to what you see, progress has begun on the city center as well. Chelyabinsk is f***ing huge. It's the 7th largest city in Russia, and Team CIS have done this huge genitalia-esque L-shaped area of progress for it. The L shape gets really thick in some areas. Being a significant pit stop between the Russia core and the Siberian tundra via the Trans-Siberian Railway, a tractor factory was developed for the potential farming opportunities within the region, which was adeptly converted into a tank producer during World War II. Today, it struggles with being just so unbelievably gorgeous when the light hits it in just the right way. Substantive evidence of ancient metallurgy has indicated it as a significant historical site for Scythian living at least 2,000 years ago. And the city is also home to the Ural State University with a connected sports stadium, all of which has also been completed in Russia Minecraft. Tyumen has an amusement park, and it's part of the radius that Team CIS has completed. This city was the first historical Russian settlement in Siberia, in an oil-rich region neighboring Kazakhstan, and thus is economically very important to the country. Tyumen, like some of our siblings, was very unplanned, and thus in an eclectic mix of architectural styles, not adhering to any particular historical era or Russian subculture. This has gotta be one of the most northern Ferris wheels in existence. Okay, now we've got Bilbino, which is amazing. The earliest human remains found in this region have been confirmed to be early Neolithic, 12,000 100,000 years ago. This was a big gold mining town in the 1950s, but its population took a huge cut with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. I haven't mentioned this yet about all the Russian civilizations, but temperatures at all these places are really cold. I was waiting for a crazy one. Here you go. Bilbino has an average daily low of -30 Fahrenheit in January. This place is a step away from Antarctica levels of cold. I'm starting to understand why Russian people historically are depicted as just being bundled in these thick coat units. An avalanche of cotton. Here in Washington, I complain about being inside 8 months of the year like my life is being stuck in that crazy mansion in The Shining, but holy shit, you guys are on another level. No wonder you have so many Antarctica bases. It's climate adjacent. And then there's Yakutsk, which doesn't have much progress except for this beautiful church and some of its surroundings, but oh my god, I should have saved my cold rant for this one. This is literally the coldest city on Earth. First off, when you look at this temp chart on Wikipedia, how do they have an average high of 80 degrees in July and a record high of over 100 when they have an average high in January of -29 degrees Fahrenheit? What is this, the surface of Mercury? Their record low is almost -84 Fahrenheit. I'm scouring the internet right now trying to get an answer as to what this feels like. Apparently any exposed skin and you risk frostbite within a couple of minutes. The air straight up just feels like knives. It doesn't feel cold anymore. It just feels like pain. Temperatures so extreme, sucking the biological furnace out of your body is like snuffing a candle here. These really are temperatures akin to Antarctica. Book your flights today if the plane can even make it. Novosibirsk has this really bulging opera theater, the largest in all of Russia. Lots of town progress is completed around it, surrounding the beautiful courtyard. Stalin made this place the center of industry for whatever he was doing. And in 2008, Novosibirsk was the center for a solar eclipse lasting 2 minutes and 28 seconds, in which everyone died from excess radiation. Just kidding, solar eclipses can't do that yet. Spotty but substantial progress has been accomplished in Bamal, this town at the edge of this group of rivers that looks suspicious on Google Maps, as if a cat the size of Pluto made scratch marks on Russia. This area takes the cake historically. It was inhabited not just by Scythe, but by Neanderthals. Hundreds of thousands of years of history. There's also progress beginning on the lighthouse portion of this island, Shikotan, an island of disputed ownership by Russia and Japanese. Originally belonging to Japan, Russia stormed and conquered it during World War II when the Japanese were being pushed back and agreed to give the island back once a peace treaty was brokered. But that never actually ended up happening, and so to this day, both governments claim that it's theirs. I hate it when mom and dad fight. Up next is the Brest Fortress in Belarus. Wow, that's my favorite fortress. This was used primarily for strategic defense in World War II, and unfortunately, after insanely hard fighting, was eventually captured by the Germans. Hitler and Mussolini actually visited this fortress while the Germans had control of it. We've got progress in a city called Yelizovo, which started off as a tiny village back in 1848, and Kalaktirsky Beach, which had a lot of pictures on Google Maps of these strange buildings, and I had to take a look. They look like snow cones, first of all, and the second thing I noticed is this beach is buried by snow for half of the year. That's such a weird thing to see. We've got Avachinskaya Sopka, this incredible mountain with this awesome smoke effect Team CIS has created. When you look at a photo of a close-up of the top of the mountain in real life, it's spot on. They've also built Malkinka, hot mineral springs on the Kamchatka Peninsula, and some progress in Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, there's Astana, the capital of the country, with a beautiful central square, and Almaty, the largest city in Kazakhstan, whose historical roots begin in the 1st century BC with cattle breeders. Very nice. I like. In Armenia, we have the Republic Square in Yerevan. When this place underwent renovation in 2003, they uncovered ancient cellars, alleyways, and artifacts that date back 1,000 years, completely untouched and preserved. They've also built the railway station. In terms of the country of Azerbaijan, I cannot pronounce that, they've built the Baku TV tower, and that's it. And in terms of the country Tajikistan, they've built this gorgeous national library with surrounding courtyard. The original Dushanbe Library was founded in 1933, but this one succeeded with the title of National Library upon opening in 2012. In Kyrgyzstan, they've built the Karakol Russian Orthodox Church. Amazingly, this church is entirely made of wood and built without any nails or screws. I don't understand how that works. Complete with onion domes. And green mint roofing. And that is everything Team CIS, governing the area of Russia and Minecraft, has ever built. Except it isn't. I haven't shown you Russia's largest, most completed, most insane area, and I'm saving it for another video. So you're just gonna have to stay tuned. We have a few locations left. I've saved my personal favorites for last. If you're like me and find abandoned things to be fascinating, romantic, and mysterious, you're gonna have a hard time in America. You can find them here, for sure. But it's the odd building, occasionally crumbling small concrete thing in the woods, or extremely difficult to get to concrete bunkers for the world wars, things like that. We've had larger than these sorts, sure, but liability and the courts rule reality now, and to avoid being sued from the adventurous traveler injuring themselves after they chose to go there, our government demolishes things like abandoned small towns pretty quickly, making sure your cultural experience is clean, protected, and sanitized, all while you get in line for things with a number burned into your forehead. But Russia has abandoned villages and towns that paint across the entire landscape of their Siberian tundra. These come from all sorts of cultural epochs, most of which being the Soviet Union. It makes sense, as with communism, it's decided that apartments for this project or that will be built in a planned manner, whether or not they know people will actually come here, or if this mining operation or whatever its purpose is sustained for a long period of time. Lots of these structures were never finished, and lots of these villages were abandoned in 1990 when the whole thing collapsed. I think the most impressive example of this that the Russian team has built is Bechevinka. This is a small naval base that was built in the 1960s that was subsequently abandoned in 1996. If you look at all the photos, they left everything. The entire town, most of the furniture and appliances in the homes. There's even a rusting docked ship, and the floating remains of a submarine out in the bay. If you look at it in Minecraft, you can tell that the builders put such care into making this feel real. When humans give up and leave their settlement, nature starts taking it back, like this malignant force over the next century that stretches out its hands, grabs the buildings, and pulls them back into the earth. You really get that feeling with the detailing here. This area didn't have enough progress to be featured, but we need to talk about it for a moment. Norilsk is the second largest city north of the Arctic Circle. There's almost 200,000 people living here, but get this, there's no roads in larger Russia that can take you here. It's completely isolated, only able to travel to by plane. It's also forbidden to foreigners because of its strategic relevance in the exportation of nickel. Its exportation of nickel specifically has made it one of the most polluted cities in the world. The Siberian forest downwind of the factories is dying. They're killing off an area of trees larger than New Jersey, and nearby bodies of water are bled completely red from nickel pollution. A smaller suburban subset of Norilsk is Oganer, which I looked up this video of. It's just so insane. It has this gigantic hospital that looks like a rotting insane asylum out in the middle of nowhere in this atmospherically closed-off region totally drowned in snow. This cannot be reality. I refuse to believe this is real. They built such a large hospital for such a small residential area because they had planned on it being much bigger. They built this additional small town near Oganer of more Soviet-style residential units, but they're completely abandoned, and Team CIS has built them, even more haunting than the inhabited village just a few hundred meters away. Another one of the largest cities out in the Russian Arctic was Vorkuta. A large piece of the 20th century coal industry, Vorkuta has been in decline so rapidly since the Soviet Union dissolution that it's practically abandoned at this point, many of the buildings having no residents anymore. The town even used to have a gulag camp, Vorkutlag, where political prisoners were sent. Looking at the photos within these various articles about the town really gives a feel for exactly what's left. A large town in decline, fighting for air while nature begins to reclaim it, while a sense of human community, while shrinking, remains. This is one of the largest abandoned areas done by Team CIS, and it's one of my favorites. Being so heavily involved in this project, I've seen a lot of community interaction. One thing I saw in the last few years is Team CIS talk some really big game in terms of how much was completed now. Tens of thousands of buildings. I was skeptical, but they delivered. As gargantuan a task as it was seeing all of this, documenting it, and creating this video, imagine actually building it, because that's what they did. And you still haven't seen their biggest area yet. Digging deeper into Russia has given me an opportunity to see what looks to me like a completely different reality. Culturally, economically, aesthetically, and especially in terms of weather. The whole place gets unbelievably cold, and the vast majority of its northern stretches are almost completely uninhabited, resembling what it would look like if you built a giant, Soviet-style, crazy-looking hospital asylum in the atmospheric conditions of Antarctica. It's just such an insane place. Given that this is still one of the first video projects in the series, everything we've built on Minecraft Earth, I can't even imagine what more is to be seen in the world, and to see it with you through Minecraft.
A huge thanks to our Tier 5 patron, Solly. He saved my life in the parking lot a few days ago. Thanks, man.